Hi, thanks for joining us for the first 2 stages of the 12 stages of the life cycle. Since we will be covering the 12 stages, that it's a very wide and exciting topic through different angles, please feel free, if you haven't yet, to check our intro video. It will appear somewhere here, about the different aspects that we will be using, about the different approaches that we will be using while we will be cruising through the 12 stages, so you will have more clarity and will be easier to see the different layers that we will be looking at meanwhile cruising through every single stage. So without further ado, let's start with the first 2 stages.
Christina, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you. So, first of all, Christina, thank you very much for this introduction. Of course, whatever you say is very concentrated. We have to open up a little bit more, what is the meaning between the wholeness or the emotional and physical connection, in which way it works, what is the mechanism which define the symptoms which manifest either on emotional state or on a physical state, in which way the symptoms will transform from emotion into physical symptoms, or opposed, or the opposite is dynamic from physical to emotional. So that thing is a topic which is very, very deep and has to be opened up some more to understand the principle and the mechanism of how the symptoms will shift from one layer to another. But definitely the phrase or statement you have made that human body is one organism is the very, very foundation, the very basics. And although we deal with homeopathy, and here we deal with the 12 stages of human life, human phenomena, what is life, and how life is expressed through me and you, and what are the stages of evolution. This philosophy, this kind of 12 stages are originated from the ancient teachings coming from India, China, and the ancient Hebrews. Anyhow, one of the main purposes of the therapist is to be able to understand what the symptom means and how to relate to the symptom, in which way to understand the symptom, how to locate the category of the symptom, to which category in human life these symptoms belong to. The reason why it's so important is that the same kind of pathology that, from the point of view of Western medicine, would define the same, like, for example, ear infection, in adult or in young age, the meaning will be totally different. Or you take, for example, sinusitis, a blocked nose with a very stuffy phlegm stuck inside, or even adenoids or polyps evolve in the sinuses. If you take the case of a young child as opposed to an adult, the meaning of the symptoms, although the same, is totally different because of the stage of development, because of the requirement of growth, because of the in which way the symptoms serve, or why the symptom occur at a certain stage in life. And this is where we need to have some kind of a system that categorize and define the 12 stage of life, and what is the meaning, what is the definition, which later on, through that, it will give the clarity. And this is a very important theme in homeopathy, generally speaking, about any kind of a healing system. The clarity of the physician or the therapist, if it is not there, if clarity is not there, also result will be not there. Which means what defines later on the capacity to have result in the clinic is to which degree the therapist have clarity about the point which he wants to heal. Over here, we're having a system that the main purpose of this definition is to bring the clarity, the precise clarity from the point of view of the therapist, how to understand the symptom, why the symptom occur at certain stage in life, and what it comes to serve. What is the purpose behind the occurrence of each or any given symptom, either physically, emotionally, or mentally. Always we divide in homeopathy the symptoms to three main categories: can be physical, emotional, or mental. So the point I'm making before I start is that the 12 stage in life is not originally belong to homeopathy. The source of the definition of the 12 stages belong to the ancient teachings coming from Hindu, from India, China, and the ancient Hebrew, the ancient Jewish tradition. All of them have the same kind of definition, which basically have a certain kind of a view about life, what is life, and what is a human being, and why a human being is here, for what purpose, what is the basic meaning to be alive and to have physical body. And all of them says that we have 12 stages in life that defines the stations that we will go through. And also they will define the kind of challenges and the kind of obstacles that we might experience at each stage. And later on, they will also give some kind of a therapeutic meaning.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it's interesting because you're mentioning the source of these stages from ancient cultures, but they are, for example, in psychology, they're used in similar ways, like Erickson's model, right, in the developmental psychology field.
Erickson divided the stages of the growth of a human being into 9 stages, starting from infinite into death. Here, coming from the Far East, and again, also from the Jewish point of view, there are 12 stages, which the scope and what is human life is a little bit expanded, as I will explain very soon. Which means, although there are more psychological systems that divided the human life into something which appear to be the same, it's shrinked or minimized into the category from birth until death, where the ancient teachings giving us many therapeutic clues, because human life starts to evolve before the appearance, before baby is born, there is already the beginning of life.
I'm really sorry, but that's really interesting because it actually matches with the latest scientific research. You see, for me, these things are very interesting, how ancient teachings actually show something that the latest science is showing, like if the mom was stressed or depressed or anxious, affects the brain development in a kid 10 years later, right? So it's definitely there, the connection.
Yes, I agree with you, Christina. Is that the ancient teachings relate originally to the very basic question, which is what is a human being, why a human being is here, what is the purpose to be alive, why you are here, what you should do here while you are here, what are the tools which are in your hand to fulfill the reason of why you are here, and to which degree you will do it. And all of them saying the same things. And because of these questions, they also evolve philosophical systems and therapeutical systems which address these questions. You see, so over here is another point of view which relates to the existence questions of who is a human being, why he's here, and what he has to do here. Anyhow, what I'm saying is the main point which I made this kind of commentary is to explain that these 12 stages are not homeopathic origination, but they give the homeopathic therapeutic means the capacity to understand better, the capacity to define better and to have a better level of clarity about the causation of the symptom and to which category belong to, and therefore, as a result, in which way to relate to it. And this is why we have in this system and these kind of teachings. Because of the sake of clarity and because of the sake of understanding, which unless it's there, whatever you will do in homeopathy or other healing system will be not as correct, not as precise. Over here, the preciseness is very, very important. Okay, so let me start. So human life has, as I was saying before, 12 stages. And the first stage of anybody of us, any human, any person who is live in this world, even Jesus Christ, included him as well, is that before you are born, you're having a father and a mother, which their history and the kind of a life which they had, and the kind of a life which they lived, and the accumulation of history which they store in the organism are there, which means the history of your parents, my parents, your parents, are the first stage of who we are before the conception. And this point is very, very interesting. It has also clinical, many kind of clinical evidence in homeopathy, how one generation transfers itself to the other. It's a very, very vast teachings, why and how come some ailments, some difficulties coming from the life of the parents are transferred to the baby, and later on grows into theme, physical themes or emotional themes, and later on turning to be an obstacle in our life as a result of the life which they lived. Usually, the unresolved issues of the parents, the non-worked out issues of the parents, the unconscious or the things which they did not manage to overcome in their own lives, the kind of challenges, the kind of either trauma or physical diseases or things which they accumulated in their life, which they did not manage to overcome, will be an accumulation which will be transferred into the baby. Which means it's a very heavy duty stage. The first stage, before the conceptual stage, is a very heavy duty stage because there is already a pre-preparation, a pre-ground that later on will determine the kind of the undercurrents, physical or emotional dynamics we will experience in our lives. I cannot right now explain it all. I will just give one example which I've seen in the clinic very recently. He's a young boy, he's 13 years old, he's coming with studying difficulties, HDAD, attention difficulties. He has also a lot of violent and social problem in the school. And he is like this, basically quiet from a young age. And the main point about this child is that his mother was a heroin addict. And she was heroin addict, which managed to overcome it before she was conceived this child. However, the emotional situation she had faced, which made her become heroin addict, was not resolved. Which means later on, the child expressed an addict patterns, emotional addict patterns, when he's very, very young in age. And the treatment was referred not to his emotional or mind difficulty to concentrate, but to the history of the mother before he was born. In homeopathy, he received a remedy which related to the kind of content transferred to him through the mother before he was born. So over here, when we see traces of very clear traces between a father to a son, a mother to a son, mother to a girl, in which some issues are going from one generation to another, we have in homeopathy the ways of how to relate to it, and it's considered to be a pre-conception stage in life. Then the next stage in life.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah, of course.
So here we will include real pathological states, like you mentioned. For example, somebody was, I don't know, going through a trauma, like a war or something really severe, right? That
Yes.
Maybe had a strong anxiety or depression, before getting pregnant and conceiving and the whole process.
Yes.
So that gets imprinted, and then the child has like a severe imprint, let's say,
Yes,
difficulties, let's say attention difficulties or perception difficulties or studying difficulties. But my question is then it's also lighter stuff, just general parental predisposition, like miasm, right?
yes, this is what we call in homeopathy miasm, which means an atmosphere. Miasm means an atmosphere in which the baby was born, which this atmosphere, which can be cultural atmosphere or a house atmosphere or a relationship atmosphere between the parents, which produce in the baby.
And
but again, here I would like to add to it, Christina, that in our clinic nowadays we see many children because the grass phenomena, the marijuana phenomena, becoming more and more popular in our culture.
Yeah, by the way, in Canada it's legalized, right? So it's everywhere.
So what it means that many people are becoming to be a marijuana. I wouldn't say an addict, but it's trying to be something which is a part of a common life, where people smoke grass, hashish, all this on a daily basis, and it produces a certain kind of a frame of mind in the parents, which later on will go into the baby because of this kind of semi-drug abuse. And then you will see a very specific pathology of children which are born up with fears, anxiety, and difficulty to concentrate, because the kind of history exists in the parents before they was conceived the baby. And we have the capacity to trace by the very basic symptom of the child what kind of drugs usage was there before he was conceived. So this is one of the aspects that we see quite a lot.
So this is very interesting for non-homeopaths, like how we can trace by, like you just described, right? Like seeing in kids the specific set of symptoms, and then we see the repetitive set of symptoms in other kids, and then we trace a common source phenomena that we see that all the parents of these kids were users of marijuana. So basically, this is in homeopathy very fascinating because you have very practical knowledge about these things. Everything that we will talk about today, even though it's on the emotional level or mental or like intergenerational, like we are talking right now, what you inherit from your parents, whether it's behavior patterns or disabilities in some extent, we see through clinical practice, right? So we trace, and after you see so many people, patterns start to emerge. And so then you get a picture of what that behavior, whether it's like smoking marijuana in, you know, before pregnancy, how it imprints in the kid. So it's really interesting to see these patterns.
Whatever I'm saying is fully supported by clinical experience. It's not an idea.
Right.
You see that Lily want to ask something?
Sorry, yeah, just a quick question I have. The way that I just want to know if I understood it correctly. Even if the parents was like had addiction problem before pregnancy, and let's say like years before they even intend to have children, they quit that addiction, whatever it is. You're saying that still can impact the kid, right? Even after they already quit for years?
Definitely, especially if the main causation of becoming an addict did not resolve, is still there, and find either different ways of expression a part of drug usage.
Okay, because what, like in my mind, there are two different things. Like a person who had addiction problem, but it quit, but he or she quit, can have like you said, emotional and mental problems still after pregnancy and after having this child. Of course, that mental issues can still impact the child, but that's different from someone who, for example, resolved. So I think my question is it going through the genes, like, or is it just the mental stage of that parent that later on would impact the child? or is it doesn't matter, whatever it is, you have addiction few years ago, your gene gonna impact this kid?
Well, right now in our as Christina was mentioned before, when she tried to enforce the approval of science about the ancient teachings, one of them shows that genes are not fixed and they are changeable during life. There are many researches about the human genes that show how they transmute, change. They are not fixed, and they are easily changed by the environment, by wrong food, by emotional habits, by many kinds of things which has an impact on the human organism. One of the things which definitely produce a gene mutation is a very strong emotional trauma, or a very strong emotional way of life which produces an impact on the human organism. As we see it very evidently that almost any thought, any range, all the range of emotions has an immediate physical impact. We can see it very clearly by many kind of machinery that we're having right now in our culture, in our science laboratories. Definitely, if you take into account some life events or some way of life which is there for many years, that will change the nature of the body. The body will be shifted as a result of that. And this kind of emotional content or life experience contents will transfer into the baby organism. There's a content which is there before birth, which means who are the parents? The point I'm making is that in my life, which is true to anybody's life, your life, and so on, anybody here, who are the parents and what kind of life content they lived and what kind of things they are faced, if they manage to resolve it or not, and to which extent, is going to transfer to me. And that thing has two possibilities. Either it will produce in my life a ground which can be also a positive ground, because the parents can be also good individuals, yes. But from the point of view of a therapist, I'm speaking from the eyeglasses, yes, from the frame of mind of a therapist. So here I relate more to the pathological side of that. So nevertheless, I will mention definitely that there are many children which born with a very high platform of existence because the parents are very high as well. Yes, so it's not only negative, but many cases I've seen that a person will challenge obstacle in his life not because of his own life, not because he did anything at all. It's because there is in him a heavy-duty content which comes from the parents, which produce in him emotional or physical obstacle. And this obstacle is something which becoming to be a real serious barrier to the person, which he will face either in his career or in personal life or in intimacy life and so on. There will be a stage in which this person will have to look inside and to see this situation and to see the places. And again, once more, in homeopathy, we have the ways. The ways in the means are how to trace these undercurrents, how to see the connection between a father to a son, to which degree the father and mother transmitted to the baby, to the child, to my life as an adult, some issues which are right now in my present life producing an obstacle, and what will be the ways to take it out. We have definitely in homeopathy these ways. And again, the main point I'm making is to remember and to realize that we are facing in our life some challenges, which is not because of my own personality or my own being structure. It's because of something which is transferred to me and I'm right now have to deal with this. Now the question is why? What is the mechanism behind that? Is another question which we learn to other sphere, but nevertheless, this is what we are facing. Right now, I do not refer to the causation of the situation, why it is there, and why do I have to suffer because of my father or mother. This question is a very, very deep and good question. But right now, from the point of view of a therapist, I refer more to the very fact that we are facing obstacles coming from a phase in my life which is before the conception. And the need to trace it, and also once more, if I conclude this first stage, I will say that definitely we have the ways how to relate to it. It's not something which is imaginary or philosophical. It's very, very clinical, practical. Can I go further, or anybody wants to comment, to ask, or?
I may just summarize, I think in a very simple manner, I guess, correct me, right? So, because I think we tend to divide things, you see, or it's genetic, or it's emotional or mental, right? There is a general understanding that it's fairly divisive about the body systems, and in some extent it's good, especially for practitioners. But if I understood correctly, what you were trying to express and simplifying it down would be like in epigenetics, like all the fields that right now are proving the genes can be changed depending by the environment, right? So, and parents or people generally have specific psychological predisposition. And usually if somebody that we started from an addiction, if you have an addiction, even if you drop it, there was a type of trauma, something that make you become addicted in the first place, right? There is some disconnection from the self. So that may come from the genes and the psychological aspect influence one another, right? So it's not only this or only that. But still what he was explaining, this ambience, right, of trauma or tendency for addiction will get transmitted, right? Even if the person dropped the addiction, if the trauma that created the addiction in the first place, it's not solved, or the problem will be still there, just perhaps manifested in another way.
If a parent went through a very severe trauma, a war trauma, something which has to do, I don't know, a bankrupt, rape, some violence experience, and so on, and the parents did a good work by the parent who went through these experiences did a good work of a real healing on himself. The baby is going to receive a present from the point of view that there is a benefit of the work which the parent managed to overcome. And this kind of present into the baby's organism is going to be another quality which will enhance his own life. On the contrary, if the parent did not manage to overcome some trauma, even if he's living very well, but the trauma is a hidden trauma, the baby will have to bear it, and he will have to confront it. The main problem is that later on, when we deal with an adult, in which way to determine what are the issues which belong to the personality or the person's life, and what are the issues which coming from the parents, which way to determine that. And this is where we are entering into the clinical dynamics. Yes, how to define and how to be able to discern what belongs to what. Many times, for the person himself, it will be very difficult to notice. I feel grief since I was remembering myself. All my life I feel grief. Why I feel grief? I don't know why I feel grief. This is what I feel all my life. I saw a case like this some weeks ago, a young man, 35 years old. He came because of grief. Why I feel grief? I don't know. This is how I am. This is who I am. Since when? All my life. What happened? Something happened? I don't know. I feel grief. When you say grief, what do you mean? And then he gave me a whole list of grief symptoms, lack of motivation, lack of energy, and so on. So it's a very classical sign of grief, which is not belong to him, not to the parents. So I go immediately directly to ask about the parents. What is the way of life which they live? So the father left when he was very young in age. He left the home. The mother, she is the one which rose him up. When she was 5 years old, she was dumped from her own house. She was taken as an orphanage to another family. Over there, she was lived like a slave in another family. We took her like a slave. And she was also raped again and again until she was a teenager. Then she managed to be able to fight herself out for this family. And she lived a very, very, very violent life, very, very violent, full of challenges, and very, very aggressive. And also this aggressiveness which she experienced also passed into her family. He was the youngest among 7 children. All the 6 above him suffered from her a great violence, and he did not. The grief behind the mother way of life, which was never resolved, transferred from her into him. And he right now experiencing an inborn grief, which is not because that he is a grief individual, because the mother was never able to confront or to resolve the kind of experience that she had. So he received a remedy in homeopathy which related to the grief he was inherited from the mother into his own organism, which is not belong to him. He's not a sad or apathic or indifferent individual. However, it was enforced on his organism because of the kind of life challenges his mother experienced. You see, over here, I'm not trying to, from the point of view of a therapist, I'm not trying to put the finger where is the fault, who to blame. Yes, I'm not trying to do that at all. I'm trying to define the kind of situation that we are dealing with, so later on the clarity of the point which we want to treat and how to take it away will become very clear. And how to discern it, what is the way of measure, which way to measure a symptom, and how to know to which causation it belongs to.
I just wanted to comment that this was really, really helpful for me. Because I actually all my life had fought against all these tendencies that I know didn't belong to me. It belonged to my parents, but I think in my life right now, I think I need to learn, and I don't know if if I need to see someone from your group, but I need to learn to separate the emotions and the tendencies that I think I inherited from my parents that I've been fighting against versus what my own self really wants. Because I do believe what you're saying. Like, I think all my life I've fought against tendencies because I know they belong to my parents, and it actually helped me navigate and get to where I am and not repeat, mistakes that they've made. But my parents had a lot of trauma. So I just wanted to tell you that this is very enlightening for me.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing it. I really appreciate that. And it's not my aim at all to produce pain in either you or anybody else, although it's a very heavy duty topic. I understand that very, very, very clearly. Again, once there is clarity, then things becoming easier. So here we're having a discussion that brings clarity about issues that might be very, very deep, especially in our culture, what we are facing right now is a transformation of past generations which live a traditional way of life. For example, I worked in Korea, in South Korea 2 years ago. Over there in South Korea, they have a whole new generation, young generation, which are disconnecting itself from the parents' generation back to the past, which all of them are very, very deeply traditional, which produce a very, very severe social crisis in South Korea because the new generation is a high-tech generation, which ignores the ancient principles of a way of life which is there for thousands of years, which produce a very, very severe social crisis in South Korea.
Become robots.
And this is very true in America. If you see, for example, a person which is a young person, that his parents can be bringing into the house, for example, a Japanese way of life, or a Buddhist way of life, or certain kind of cultural aspects coming from the parents, from the ancestors' way of life, and later on the child is born into an American way of thinking. Although he is like an American, like a young American, he will have on his shoulder the kind of a culture, the kind of cultural influence which produce an impact on the emotional and the physical aspect of his life. And what are the distinction? Where is the distinction between who is myself as an individual as opposed to the kind of cultural traces and influences which are existing in me as a result of the way of life of my parents is very, very important to clarify to myself, you know, as a person. When I say myself, I refer to all of us. And by that, it's becoming very, very clear. And once it's becoming very clear, they take the load. Because when, again, once the cloud is not there, it's a cloud of suffering and hard to relate to. So this is basically something that we have the ways, again, how to discern it and also how to take it away, which produce a very, very deep healing. And shall we go further, or anybody wants to comment?
I'll say something. I think this pre-pregnancy stage, it kind of reminds me of like a lack of my control. But it's interesting. What's interesting about this is that there can be like an external perspective that identifies an opportunity for me to make change later in those later stages. But it's just interesting, like, well, this first stage is just like, okay, like, yeah, this is like the content you get. And then, so yeah, this like initial stage feels a little bit like, ugh, like, you know, just like, I don't get a lot of exercise my control because it's, you know, the content given to me.
Thank you very much, Johnson. See, the question is, I used to work in India, in England. I used to run a clinic in London for a while. And over there, I met many kind of young Indians, which they are kind of again, once more, this kind of like I saw a young man, approximately, I would assume your age, and he having his shoulder an Indian tradition, how to meet a girl, in which way to date a girl, and the old fashion of dating thing. And he lived in the UK, you know, like a common teenager and so on. And he had a great heavy pressure in which way to do it. And because of that, he was entering into a very deep depression, which means that he carried on his shoulder the weight of culture, the weight of the parents, which is not there any longer. You see, so the point I'm making is that anybody, all of us, having in our life some emotional traces, which gradually, as you're becoming older and older, it starts to become a part of the structure of your personality. But as a matter of fact, it is not. Why it is there, again, and for what purpose you should carry the load of your parents, why it is as such, for what purpose, this is another discussion. It's another discussion, which is a very, very important discussion. What is the purpose for us to carry the load of somebody else? And what are the principles and the meaning of all that? But nevertheless, again, once more, I'm just mentioning it as is, and maybe later on we will open up some more if Christina will arrange it to make it more in expansion. Shall we go further? Christina, what do you think?
I don't know how you feel. I think by 12, it's a little bit high aim to reach today. I think all the 12 stages with this pace.
My idea was to put all 12 stages in one talk, but right now I see it's not possible at all. Especially that every stage is what we call a hot potato. You will see yourself in every given stage. You will see yourself, and you will see in yourself certain kind of an elements, some things which you will feel identify with. Let me go shortly to the next stage, so you will have at least one more. It's the conception. Over here, it's the next stage of life, which produce a very strong impact of who we are, is the time of conception between the egg and the ovary, the egg in the ovary and the sperm. What was the condition of the parents at the time of conception determine the vitality, the immune system capacity, the energy degree, which will transfer into the baby's life later on. This point has a very, 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 very strong impact, much more than what we believe or think. For example, a baby who born in the laboratory. Right now, it's quite a fashion to conceive babies which are induced in the laboratory. We see it very often in the clinics. These children, they will born with a weaker constitution. Weaker constitution, they will have more pneumonias, more allergies, more respiratory infections, more gastric disturbances. Later on, they will have more autoimmune diseases like allergy or things which are more deep, because the impact of conception was not there. So one aspect of this stage is what was the process of conception? What was it, if it was induced or if it was natural? If it was induced, to know right from the start that this organism we are facing is weaker compared to the average. There will be more diseases in that individual, which has to do with a weak inborn constitution because of this kind of induced conception. Another phase of this stage, which is also very, very important and difficult to investigate in, because it might be a little bit embarrassing or a little bit inconvenient to go to and to ask the parents what was your condition when you in which way were you. So it might be a little bit embarrassing, but nevertheless, sometimes we do have information about that. For example, we have, if you remember, the Gulf War in '91 in Iraq, Iran. That war, one of the things which happened there was a whole generation which was born because of a rape. Many, many women, because of the conquering land between Iran and Iraq, Kuwait, and all the Gulf countries which are there, a whole generation was born because of women who were raped, which means the conception was done violently, unwillingly, done in a certain way which is to some degree unnatural. Right now we have a social researchers that shows what kind of people, what kind of generation came up as a result of this phenomenon. We see certain kind of an emotional traces among them. We see in them some element of anti-socialism, anti-family attitude. They don't want to have a family. We see in them a trace of loners. They don't like society. Don't want to be with people. We see a trace of violence. Here and there we see more aggressiveness in these people. We see emotional difficulties which has to do with intimacy. They rather to have a random sex, which means they don't want to have one partner and to have a relationship which gradually grows during the years. Which means we see a definite emotional structure, way of life structure of a generation which born under certain kind of circumstances, which we know it was as a result of conception which done through rape. Now, if you take a good close on this phenomenon, again, we're having right now in our culture another phenomena, which is people which conceived their babies, she was conceived when she was under either alcohol or drugs. This is very, very important. Have a very, very deep aspect, a very deep imprint on the later on life of the baby. What kind of physical and emotional state she and he were at the time of conception. If they were with drug abuse or alcohol abuse at the moment of conception, this kind of imprint is going to be in the organism for a long, long time, which produce later on many kind of disturbances, which has to do with the degree of vitality. Again, the conception, what determines later on in life is the kind of vitality the person will have. If it's high or low, weak, strong immune system, or strong capacity to protect oneself, either emotionally or physically, as the environment are shifting, changing. Whenever there is a shift, a change, in which way the person responds to changes, what are the person's capacity to become flexible, because life is under a constant change all the time. So one of the main indications about the kind of imprint from conception has to do with the capacity to face change. Later on, we'll speak about it more when we come to the delivery process. So again, this stage of conception, the moment of conception, the main point to investigate about that if something particular happened at that time, if it's done willingly or not, if it's done when the person was open to it or not. Always when I take a case of anybody, especially children, I ask the parents, is the conception that will happen natural or not? If it's happened unnatural, which means some hormone additions or some induced conception in the laboratory, it's one category. Or on the contrary, if there is anything particularly which happened while there was conceiving the child. Again, if there was some kind of do it under a threat of a war, do it, they were together because after a party and both of them were drugged, and so on. That thing is a very important information, because later on you will see traces in the dynamic of energy productions and the immune system degree in the baby's life. Okay, so anybody wants to comment about that? Or, and here, if we go more to when I teach, Christina can
confirm.
Confirm it. But when I teach these things in a normal class, I ask my students to be courageous enough, to have enough courage in a moral way, in a nice way, right? Not in an aggressive way at all. Only if it's convenient to try to investigate about this point, because many kind of clues we will have of the person if something there was not natural. The emotional state of the parents are very, very important when it comes to the time of conception, because it's a very deep imprint. The imprint later on will remain. If you go to the ancient teachings, they will say that this imprint is not possible to change. I say it is possible to change, but nevertheless, ancient textbook says that this kind of imprint is unable to change. So usually I will a little bit give a hint to push the students to be able to try to go into a kind of a investigation about to ask the parents, in what condition were you during conception? Did you feel happy or not? Did you feel cheerful or did you feel depressed and so on? That thing will explain a lot about yourself, a lot.
And this is Rita. I'd like to say something.
Please go ahead.
Hello. I was able to spend the last 10 years of my mother's life with her. I spent a lot of time with her, and we had a lot of deep conversations. And she told me on her wedding night, she was from a farm, very puritanical, very Catholic. My father was from the city nearby, and she had no clue, even though she was raised on a farm. It was really looked down on with punishment as a response if they watch the animals copulate. So she had no clue about sex or birth. Her mother wore frocks. They thought the baby came in the doctor's bag, literally. So on her wedding night, she hadn't a clue. My father ended up raping her as his duty to consummate the marriage. 9 months later, she had my oldest brother, who was born colicky, a very unhappy child. My mother had to have shock treatments from the incident. She was severely depressed, and that child became a raging alcoholic, a very abusive, verbally, physically, to his wife, to his children, just a mess. I was 3 more children down. I was the 4th child born, and my mother said she wanted a child at that time and really seduced my father. And I was born kind of happy and raring to go. So there was a big difference in those two.
So again, Rita, thank you very much. I really appreciate the honesty behind your words, because it's not easy to speak out loud of that. I really appreciate your courage and your honesty.
You're welcome. Thank you.
But the story that you share is something that we see quite a lot. Once more, unfortunately, we see it quite a lot. And here, through your story, we can definitely see the differentiation: same mother, same father, but different emotional or physical or mind structure when the conception was there, and as a result, a different child. You see, as a result, a different way of life. The first brother, the first one to be born, is suffering quite a lot from guilt, from self-destruction. And Rita here, which is the 4th, she was conceived from a mother which wants a child. As a result, she is more open, more conscious, more happy. You see? And that thing is this is why I say it's very, very important to know what was the mind and emotional and the intimacy connection between the parents, because it will explain many, 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 many things about yourself. So thank you, Rita, for this sharing. Shall we continue, Christina? I'm not aware of the time limit of our talk, so we can go.
We have 15 minutes more.
Anybody wants to ask anything until now or to share?
I just wanted to say, Shirley, this is like mind blowing. So are we gonna have any more talks? Since we have 15 minutes.
Yes, and here I have to say I do it very, very shortly because of it's a kind of a representation, not so much a full scope of the teaching. So here I say it in a kind of a glimpse into it, not so much the full scope of what is, again, because we should also go to the method of recovery. Because once I say that, for example, the story of Rita that she was saying before, it's a tough story. It's a tough life story. She said it very, very shortly, in a few sentences, but she described something which is very, very, very tough. And the point I'm making is that we have the ways how to relate to it clinically. We have the ways how I'm not speaking about something which is philosophical. I'm speaking about system here which is practical and with a medical logics behind it, with the ways which what I'm trying to say is that there is a hope. If it sounds very, very heavy duty things, there is a hope because we know how to relate to it. Let me go further, although we don't have much time, but how much time we have, it's okay. And Christina will arrange more talks like that, so we continue further next time. The next stage is, if I summarize the conception stage, although you see, go once more to the conception, to the second stage. Yeah. If I summarize it in a few sentences, although it can be very quick, you see, the sperm and the ovary meet is something which is done like in a second. But the condition of the parents at that time, the degree of the intimacy between them, the emotional state they are in, what they're thinking, what they feel, the physical situation, whether they are well or sick by some sickness, produce a very, very deep impact later on in the person's life. We produce a whole line of either health or disease situations, which will determine through the vitality production, immune system capacity to face change, and a basic attitude about life. What is the basic attitude? Happy or sad, destructive or constructive, and so on. As Rita was saying before, which is a very, very good example, and we see it quite a lot. So we are not in this kind of a sphere, but among you, anybody who can find the possibility to receive information about that, you will see a lot from that information about yourself. I advise it very, very warmly. And if you see some kind of traces like that, don't become depressed, because they are definitely treatable. Okay, so we go to the...
I think it's really good, just a small remark, because I think it's overlooked in our culture greatly, like you said, you know, with artificial types of conception, the point that there is a vitality, right? That the person's vitality, it's important in the moment of conception as well, right? If the person is sick, has a chronic disease, or it's by, you know, like under influence of some substance, it's really a difference than having a frozen egg and artificially inseminate somebody that came from a freezer, somebody, I mean like a substance, right? That's something that was part of a vital system in the moment, and the system was hopefully healthy and it is highest energetic stage, right? So I think it's very, very overlooked. In this type of debates, I never notice any type of approach that will acknowledge this aspect, that it's basically essential, right? That gets like why it also connects with infertility, right? That the vitality is not high enough to produce another human being. And that should not be forced, I mean, artificially perhaps, right? Yeah, so it's, I guess, a whole another opening.
Yeah, well, you see, it's true, I agree. But many times I had these discussions with, you see, because when you see a mother and a father and they really, really want a child, there's a deep inner starvation, which is real and genuine, that they want a child which will be their own child, from their own genes, yes? And they will do a certain kind of manipulations, which is available in our culture, without this awareness. And later on, they will face many problems with this child. This child is the kind of challenges they're going to face as a parents are going to be very different. But how can you relate to the parents from the point of view of the inner, genuine desire to be a parent? You see, how will you relate it? So if it is available in our culture, it's definitely something that we can use it. However, we should know the ramifications, the consequences of this kind of procedure. And again, in homeopathy, we have the ways of how to relate to it. Thanks God. So that thing has to be remembered.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, shall we transition we have 5 minutes left though. I'm not really sure.
Anybody wants to ask anything or to say, or to maybe to raise a question or anything at all?
Oh,
Oh.
it's Shirley again. Rita had asked me, or she sent in a thing through the chat, but if we wanted to find more information about this talk, is this something we could find on the Uma Tribe website? Or
Yeah, this talk will be published and you will find all the other events published there as well. So everything connected with this work and, with COVID, we'll do different aspects of, personal development and health and stuff like this will be constantly available there. You can also sign up for the newsletter so you will just receive the notification for all the next talks and stuff.
amazing, thank you. I just didn't want to give her the wrong information because it was in the beginning, so I saved it on the slide that you had.
Oh,
So
good.
it's just mind-blowing. I'm really happy I went to this talk. I feel like I wish I found this like earlier, but better late than never, right?
Don't feel regret. You see, life is very, we are dealing here with the kind of stages we are facing in life, which means we are dealing with life itself. And life, we see, they have certain kind of phenomena in which things will happen in certain kind of coordinations with other things which are very precise. So again, the question why right now we are meeting together, because of what reason, why you and me, I'm in Israel and you are in America somewhere, I don't know. What is the reason behind all that is something which is also a part of these teachings. However, we are focusing only on the part of the removal of the obstacle, so progression will occur. So evolution will occur. So, which means what I'm saying is, the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is that there is a reason why you had to wait until this moment that you hear these things right now. Emotional preparation, spiritual maturity, capacity of inner ground to be able to relate, a capacity of consciousness in which these kind of words will be planted in your mind like a seed, and later on it will produce in you some kind of a process. I don't know. But there is a preparation which you had to do before you come into a stage in which something new is opening up. This is usually what we see when we hear this kind of things. Why the time frame of people's life and why things occur in certain stages is because of preparation, usually. Because they need to prepare yourself, and once you are prepare enough, even though it might appear that you waited for a long time, then there will be the continuity.
Thank you for your kind words. And yes, it's actually because I've been aware of a lot of new things lately, so I feel like it's drawn me to this. So thank you so much. That was very kind of you.
Yeah, just a quick question. First, yeah, the same as others, I just want to thank you for the great lecture. So are we going to have like other meetups for the rest of the talk, for the other stages? Are you going to plan for that?
Well, the idea is to continue to do the all stages. My idea, as a matter of fact, was to do it all in this lecture. However, right now I see that what I was thinking. I mean, what I was thinking myself. When I was thinking to do it all in one lecture, where was I? Not in reality. So we will have a continuity, definitely. We later on, Christina will talk, and she will be the one who advertise it. And you're welcome, definitely, you're welcome.
Yeah, sure. There will be a continuation. We will see if we will be covering like 1 or 2 per meeting or something, I guess. But I will forward you the invites, sure.
Great.
I'm sure everybody here will be present for the next one.
Yeah, and if like you said, if like the plan is to cover 2 stages in each session, it would be like 5 more or 4 more
Yes.
meetings. So yeah, thank you.
Christina, what is the website? I didn't catch that, where we can get further information.
It's umatribe.com. I can
Uma.
send it through the meetup message, so it will be the link directly there.
UMA, Uma?
Yes, and tribe.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you have any other questions, just forward to the email there. It's like info@umatribe.com. So we can address, you know, things from different angles and then present in a way that, you know, fulfills your needs at the moment. Like he just said, right? We are all having different needs in different moments in our life. But yeah, I believe, I mean, Kobe can go on and on. I think we can just talk about the first stage for like 4 or 5 hours, realistically, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of information. Yeah. Thanks, Kobe, for making this happen and for sharing all this knowledge. It's really enriching. Yeah, thank you very much.
Welcome. Wonderful to see you, my friends from all over the world. And again, the main point I would like you to remember that we are talking about things which are resolvable. It is resolvable. So it's not something which is to be stuck for the whole life. And it's not a punishment that you're facing certain kind of issues. Everybody and every person in life carry issues. It's not a punishment, there is a causation, and the reason why you particularly have to face whatever you have to face. Again, I'm not entering right now to the sphere of causation. I'm speaking here from the point of view of a therapist. However, also that thing has to be included, the causation and what it means. And later on, next time we continue further.
Great. I think it's a perfect note to conclude on. Great. Thanks to everybody for coming. It was really wonderful seeing you all here. And as soon as we find out when we are available for the next one, we will announce it in both platforms. And yeah, hope to see you all soon and have good reflection times. And if you have the chance, oops, I'm so sorry, ask your parents, as Kobe suggested.
Thank you so much.